Hi, welcome to our show today, folks. We've got a great show lined up for you. I'm going to be talking about trust. You know, how can you trust the advisor? I'm going to answer that question. When can I retire? I'm going to talk about estate tax, right? Most specifically, estate tax exclusion. The income laddered approach, just one way to approach income, and is your financial house in order? So stay tuned.
Retiring Well, brought to you by Centennial Wealth Advisory, financial advisors specializing in retirement planning and serving all of Northern Michigan. Retiring Well, helping you plan for a successful and comfortable retirement. Retiring Well, plan to retire well.
Hi, listen, in this segment, I want to talk about trust. I had a conversation with my wife not long ago, and I said, you know, honey, as you look at the industry I'm in, you know, how do you look at it? You know, she's not in it all the time. I was curious. And she goes, you know, Larry, if anything happened to you, you know, if I was going to have to deal with somebody else, you know, I'd want to make sure that person was informed. Okay, you know, one of the things she mentioned too is, you know, I'd want to make sure that they had my best interests in mind. And then she goes, and then if they give me advice, what if they're wrong? Right? You know, what I found odd about this is it had nothing to do with education, which I thought would probably be the most important thing, you know, other than the fact that she wanted to be informed. It really boiled down to trust. She goes, you know, if you weren't around, I'd want to make sure that I could trust that advisor. You know, probably the best definition I've ever heard of trust is this. It's a consistency over time. All right, over time. You can't shortcut the time factor, right? You know, really for you to trust somebody fully, they're going to have to have been consistent with you over a long period of time before you really give them all that trust. So if that advisor doesn't have time to build that trust, you know, they're initially having a conversation with you, what should you do? Well, first of all, you know, you want to make sure they're using a third-party custodian. They're not the ones holding your assets. You know, think of Bernie Madoff, right? He held the assets and then he reported back to them. You don't want that. You want somebody else holding the assets, reporting to you everything the advisor is doing in the account. That brings integrity to the system. Maybe referrals. You know, the best leads I ever get is when somebody's coming from a referral from somebody else who's dealt with me for a long time, that knows they can trust me, feels comfortable referring their family, friends, or whoever the case might be. So that could be very important. If you're not coming to the advisor from that, maybe get some referrals. Do a background check. You know, make sure there isn't any negative history that broker or that advisor has. You know, that's really easy to do by doing a broker check with a FINRA. Disclosures. Read the disclosures. You know, that's where you know, most advisors or brokerage companies and that are putting their conflicts of interest, and they have to disclose that. So read those. Don't just discard them. You know, what should an advisor do in this case? Well, they should be able to recite their core values. They should tell you how they get paid. They should be able to share their experience, good and bad, you know, how'd they do through 2000 through 2002 with the tech bubble, or 2008. How regularly do they communicate? Very important. Is that going to be quarterly, or are you never going to hear from them, right? They should be able to show patience. You know, if you're going to know the good and bad about certain investments, then they should have the patience to be able to walk you through and educate you as to those. Are they independent? Are they just selling one company's products, or can they sell a number of companies' products? You know, my response back to Chris after all this was said and done, as we were talking about, you know, trust, I said, honey, I said, if anything should ever happen to me and you did have to deal with somebody, you know, one thing I would advise you, and I would advise you folks to do, is make sure your goals and objectives are been made very, very clear. Make sure that that advisor that you're working with knows clearly what you want that money to do for them. And if you have to keep telling them, because that's, you know, you have to be able to trust that what they're going to put you in matches with what you want it to do. So hopefully you find this valuable. Trust is a key component to your relationship with your advisor, and if you don't have that, then I encourage you to give us a call.
We look forward to helping you plan to retire well.
At Centennial Wealth Advisory, we specialize in retirement planning. Folks, we put a show together every week that we talk about a number of financial topics that are critical in your retirement planning, from tax planning, estate planning, income planning, long-term care, health care planning, and investment management. If you missed the show, then you just visit our website, go to the media tab, and you'll see the latest show. Have you ever wondered when you can retire? Listen, this is a question we get asked a lot. Folks will come into our office, they'll say, listen, this is what I have, can I retire? Folks, there's a lot of different things that have to be considered. The first thing that we have to ask is how much income a person wants. You know, what's the lifestyle they want to enjoy when they're in retirement? We've got to start with that because I got to have a picture of how much money that's going to be and what that looks like. The second place I want to go is I want to look for sources of income. You know, do I have pension income? Do I have rentals? Do I want to still work part-time? Do I have sufficient savings? I want to, Social Security, what's that going to look like? So I want to look for sources of income. Another thing I want to look at is debt. Am I going into retirement with any mortgage debt or any other kind of debt that might, you know, hurt my cash flow when I get into retirement? So we're going to have to look at that. And then again, savings. You know, how much did I put away in those IRAs, those 401ks, those 403bs, those 457s? You know, how much do I have there that I can count on? And then there's another factor we want to look at is health insurance. All right, if I'm not at the age of 65 and can receive Medicare, how am I going to bridge that gap if I'm stopping working and having health insurance? You know, where is that going to come from? So we want to look at that. Inflation. You know, I might have all the means to pull together a plan today, but with inflation, is it going to be able to keep up with it over time? If I live another 20, 30 years, the purchasing power I have today is going to look much different down the road, and maybe I want to be, you know, having that, you know, put into my plan as well. Income taxes, you know, if I've got all my money in IRAs and now that's the only place I can pull income from and every bit of it is going to be taxed, well, what does that look like, right? Or maybe I'm somebody that's fortunate enough to have other buckets of money, let's say non-qualified money, or what's really called non-retirement money. Or how much do I have in Roth IRAs where I can pull and not have it be taxable? And what's my tax plan as I begin to take that income? And if it's all going to be taxable, well, isn't that going to affect things as well? Can you see that there's so many factors involved in making that decision as to whether you can retire? And so I can't stress enough, having an income plan is so vitally, vitally important. You know, you should be looking at this 4 or 5 years before you pull the trigger, just so you know what it looks like. Or if it has some deficiencies, you have ways to correct it as you approach that date. So if that's you, as you're approaching retirement, you're maybe 4 or 5 years out and you're wondering whether you can pull the trigger, then I encourage you, give us a call and we can sit down and develop some kind of a plan for you before you decide to do it.
So glad Larry's talking about building trust. And Art, we've been friends, believe it or not, folks, we've been friends for 33 years now. And we grew up going to kindergarten together, have been college roommates, and then standing up in each other's weddings. So we've been able to build that trust over a significant number of years and everything. But for those of you that are watching our show, I mean, it's something where we hear often where people have been watching Retiring Well, which has been on air now for over 10 years, which we're very proud of. But that you watch the show and you get an opportunity to get a little more familiar with us and maybe how we approach things, especially when it comes to ultimately your retirement planning.
You know, it's interesting, John. I appreciate you bringing up our long friendship there and how we've been through a lot of different things together. And as financial advisors, we learn that we go through a lot with our clients together. You know, it's one of those things where we kind of become part of the family in many different ways, where we're dealing with maybe families' deaths, unfortunately, sicknesses and all that sort of stuff, and helping folks plan and through that. So it definitely is, and we really appreciate appreciate the fact that this profession that we find ourselves in and enjoy so much is something where there has to be that trust, and you have to find that person, because let's face it, John, there's a lot of conversations that can be pretty tough along the way, right?
Oh, that's for sure. And you know, money is a big piece of your overall lifestyle, whether we want to admit it or not. And so when it comes to working with different families, that's something that we really truly enjoy, and we've had opportunities now where, you know, siblings have referred family members, and even working with multiple generations, and so it takes a lot to build those plans and make sure to work well together.
Well, thanks very much for this segment there. That's a lot of fun talking about trust, and we hope that you enjoyed that and it speaks to you. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about estate taxes and how that may play a role in your retirement plan.
Are you nearing retirement or in retirement? Have you had your portfolio just looked at or have a second opinion on that portfolio recently? Centennial Wealth is a full service advisory firm, and we have multiple locations in northern Michigan. I'm in the Gaylord office primarily. The office is right downtown Gaylord. Also up in the Petoskey office as well. That office is right off of 31. I'd love to hear your story. I'd love to sit down and chat, and it's a free, no obligation consultation, so just call the number on the screen.
Welcome back. I want to talk to you about what's called the estate tax exemption. Okay, now this is an amount that the IRS establishes that you can have, that you can pass on as an inheritance to your heirs, okay, without them having to pay estate tax, okay? Now, if you didn't know this, under the old law before the Tax Reform Act of 2017, the amount that you could pass on without any estate tax was about $5.5 million. And if you were married, now it's basically $11 million that you could pass on. Well, with the Tax Reform Act of 2017, they doubled that again. So now, as an individual, you can pass on a little over $11 million, but if you're married, now it's $22 million. So you can see that not a lot of people or heirs are having to pay what you call estate tax on their inheritance anymore. Now, one thing that's an exception is IRAs. IRA money has never been taxed. That's not something that you can pass on to your heirs without any tax being paid. They're going to have to receive that IRA, and they're going to have to do one of two or three things. First, they can take a lump sum of that IRA and pay the tax on it all at once. Or they have to take it out within 5 years, or if it's for the first heirs, they can stretch it out over their lifetime, which can be highly beneficial, especially if they're in a high tax bracket. Now, I want you to be careful. In old estate planning law, a lot of attorneys would create these trusts that could double the estate tax exemption. Okay, when that estate tax exemption was much lower, let's say at $500,000, that kind of planning was very necessary, especially if somebody had a large estate. But now that the estate tax exemption is so high, you know, I don't see a lot of attorneys doing that kind of planning. But if you had a trust that was done prior to January of 2011, and its sole purpose was to do that kind of planning where it was breaking up your trust into two so you could double that estate tax exemption, you're going to find out that with the new rules from January 2011, it might make that trust a disadvantage. Now, a lot of these estate planning attorneys will tell me that all they have to do is put an amendment into your existing trust, but if you haven't had your trust reviewed since that time and you remember your trust being created for that purposely, then you're going to want to get with an attorney and have that amendment done. Now, another thing just to recognize with, estate planning is that when you pass on an inheritance, they get a step up in basis. So if you pass on a house that maybe you only paid $50,000 for, it's now worth $200,000, they get the ability to step it up and say now they paid $200,000 for it. So if they sell it, it's going to much lower the gain. So hopefully you found this informational. If you don't have an estate plan and you want to kind of be directed to somebody that might be able to help you, we work very closely. A lot of the estate planning attorneys, we'd be glad to help.
Hi, my name is Jack Clunner and I'm a financial advisor with Centennial Wealth Advisory. My wife and I moved up here 13 years ago and we have really enjoyed raising our 4 children in the beautiful northern Michigan country that we have. If you've been watching the show for a while, you know what we specialize in. If you are at retirement or near retirement, give us a call. Call the number on your screen. We can help go through all the different aspects of planning that are involved in retiring well. So I look forward to hearing from you.
Hi, welcome back. Listen, in this segment of Chalk Talk, I want to talk to you about what we call the laddered strategy, okay? This is a way in which you can structure a portfolio to get the maximum results, especially if you're taking income in retirement. All right. First of all, what you want to do is segment a certain amount of money aside for just the first 5 years. Okay. So let's say I'm wanting to take 5% from a portfolio. Let's just use that as a general rule. That's going to be basically 25% of my portfolio. Okay. So I segment that aside. Now, because that's short-term in nature, because I need it in the first 5 years, how that's going to be invested is going to be highly conservative and very liquid, right? I might, in this environment, I might only get 1% on my money there, right? The second thing I want to do is then set enough aside for what we call the next 5 years after that, or the 6 to 10 years, okay? Now, again, if I'm taking 5%, that's going to be another 25% of the portfolio. Now, because I don't need this in the first 5 years, I've got 5 years in which it can grow and then take income. How that's going to be invested is probably going to be, still conservative, but a little bit more different than what I had in the first 5 years, okay? In this environment, maybe I'm only getting 2 to 3%, okay, on my money. Now, if I've structured it this way, I've got half my portfolio, right? 25% in this bucket, 25% in this bucket. And so I've got half my portfolio very conservatively invested for my income in the next 10 years. Now, everything else can go into that 10-year plus bucket. Okay? Now, because I don't need that for 10 years, I can have it probably in a traditional growth bucket, which means it's probably taking on a little bit more volatility, but because I have time, I'm going to get a little bit more growth out of it, right? Now, for this example, I said, let's just use 7%. Let's say it's in that bucket, I'm getting 7%. Using the rule of 72, which is if I take 72, divide by any rate of return, it's going to tell me how often my money doubles. So if I take 72, divide by 7, it means my money is going to basically double in about 10 years. So if I use this money for the first 5 years, it runs out. And then from 6 to 10 years, I use the rest of that money. Okay, so then it runs out. and the rest of it's in this bucket growing by 7%, I already know that it's going to pretty much double in that 10-year period. All right? Then all I have to do is turn around, take that money, take 25% of it, put it back here for the next 5 years, then another 25% here, and again, doing that every 10 years. Can you see how this could maybe make your outcome a little bit better, especially when you take an income? I encourage you, if this is something you want to take a closer look at, then give us a call. We'd be glad to go over this with you.
Two really great topics that Larry just got done talking about there, and I hope you were paying attention really well there, because two different things there mainly, but really important. Estate taxes. You know, I can't believe, John, how many folks that come into the office that have no estate planning. They might be in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and they've talked about it. We get to it next year. Folks, now's the time. You know, you really don't want to have something happen to you and have no estate plan in place, where those assets are going to go. If you have children, loved ones behind, it can be brutal for them, and what the steps they have to go through, extra costs. It doesn't take that much time. It's something just to step up and get done. Make that one of your 2021 plans so you can help your family after you're gone.
Yeah, so true, Art, and it is something that it makes the transition that much easier, and it's a difficult time enough, but to then have to try and go through all those finances can be a challenge. And the other area that Larry was talking about is this income ladder approach. Now, Larry likes ladders, I like buckets, so it's one of those I can draw a few buckets, but the main thing of this type of planning is making sure that you've laid out a specific plan for how you're going to generate that retirement income, because it's so vital to make sure that you're going to have that consistent paycheck that you're so used to over your working years. How then do you transition to structure that into retirement?
Absolutely, John. You know, and two of the key things here with these two segments, folks, is plan. You know, so much we talk about in this Retiring Well show is talk about planning. And all these different aspects of your life, it's critical to have that. And no, your 401k statement is not a plan. It's not going to have mapped out how you're going to get income and all those specific needs in retirement. So stay with us. Coming up next, we're going to talk about constructing your financial house and how that may be important so you can retire well.
If you're retired or soon to be retired, let us help you plan to retire well. Centennial Wealth Advisory specializes in retirement planning and has offices in Traverse City, Cadillac, Petoskey, and Gaylord. We'll never pressure anyone to become a client. Our goal is to inform and educate. Simply schedule a meeting at one of our Northern Michigan office locations for a free, no-obligation retirement review.
Hi, listen, in this segment, I want to talk about your financial house. You know, is it in order? Well, there's a number of questions that you want to ask in assessing this, right? Let's take the 10,000-foot view and let's look at that, okay? First of all, what's your net worth? You know, that's simply taking all your assets, less your liabilities or your debt, and what do I have left over? Hopefully that's a positive number, and that's a number you want to continue to grow as you get closer to retirement or in retirement, right? What's your liquidity, right? How much of these assets do I have can be converted readily into cash very quickly to meet maybe emergencies or big purchase items and the like, right? What's your liquidity? Income. Is it sufficient, right? Is it sufficient now, maybe while I'm working? And is it going to be sufficient later when I stop working? You know, do I have pension? You know, what's my Social Security? Am I maximizing Social Security, right? Am I going to work part-time? Do I have rental income? You know, that's a subject all in its own. But, you know, have I looked at income, what it is now and what it's going to be? Where am I with debt, right? Do I want to have debt when I'm in retirement? Right? Or if I'm going to be retired and let's say I'm 15 years out from retirement, I'm still sitting on a 30-year mortgage, is there something I'm going to want to adjust accordingly to make sure that that debt's paid off by retirement? Income taxes, what's my plan there? Right? If I'm in a high income bracket, am I best utilizing those 401ks, IRAs to, you know, save at that high rate? If I'm in a low income bracket, am I not, you know, trying to find ways to accelerate income or get Uncle Sam out of my IRAs to buy him out at a lower amount? What about surviving spouse? what's the taxation look like for that spouse when I pass away? What's my estate plan? As I sit here today, do my assets know where to go when I pass away? What's my plan for that, right? Who's going to make directives for me if I can't make them for myself financially or health-wise, right? Do I have powers of attorney in place? What's my investment plan, right? If I'm trying to acquire money, if I'm in that growth and accumulation phase, then what's my plan to try to grow? But if I'm in retirement or close to retirement and now maybe preservation of wealth and income is more the goal, are my investments, matching up with that? Medical, right? Am I part of a company plan? If I stop working, how do I cover that, right? If I'm not age 65 and qualify for Medicare, where am I getting that? What about other things? Like, what are my funeral arrangements? What do I want to have happen when I'm gone? What are passwords to my computers, things of that nature? What directives have I given my heirs to know where to find those? If I have gold, silver buried in the backyard, who knows about it, right? What's my plan there? Folks, there's a lot of different considerations that come into play when you're looking at your financial house. That's where we can be great help. Please do not procrastinate. This is something you want to start talking to an advisor about, you want to get a plan about. If anything, plan. Plan to retire well.
I really like the visual of this financial house, Art, and how important it is to get things in order throughout your working years and then into your retirement years. And I've been here at Centennial Wealth for 15 years, and every time I have that first time sit down with somebody, I think, oh man, they're going to have everything already done. What good am I going to do? And it's pretty rare case, surprisingly, that people have all those different areas covered. I mean, from your income to your investments to your taxes, estate planning, insurance planning, and that's ultimately where our job comes into play, is to help you work through all those different areas of your planning.
Absolutely, John. It's interesting when folks walk in, some of them come with a shoebox or a folder full of stuff, or maybe it's just loose and it's scattered all over. And I can't tell you how rewarding it is to help folks take that shoebox full of stuff, put a plan together, and really you can see that weight just lifted off their shoulders, whether they're 10 years away from retirement, just in retirement, or sometimes folks haven't even addressed this 10 years after retirement. And just to see that weight lifted off their shoulders and know that things are going to be okay. Things are going to have a reason why we're doing that. And then along the way, adjusting that, because maybe you put this together 10, 20 years ago and you're one of the people that kind of actually laid this out. Things probably have changed. Tax laws have changed. Estate laws have changed. Investments have changed. It's important to always kind of keep this up to date, right?
Yeah, so true, Art. And that's one of the biggest thrills I have is mapping out a plan. I'm a planner. I love that aspect of this position, and making sure that you have a plan, and making sure that then, hey, give you that peace of mind knowing that you're in a position to retire well.
So if you're somebody out there that hasn't done this yet or maybe needs some assistance, give us a call. Don't be embarrassed if it's all in a shoebox or you don't have a plan. Now's the time. Let us help you work out all the details, come up with your financial house so you can plan to retire well. Have a great week, and we'll see you back here again next week on Retiring Well.